Hey folks, good morning. I hope you're having a great, beautiful day so far. I will first address and admit we have had some technical difficulties today. I have done a couple of different live videos this morning and they've been being a little bit cut short. So I'm going to go ahead and just dive into this live here. If it does get cut off, I'm just going to keep recording on my end and I'll post that recording for you here in the group. But I'm hoping that I will be able to switch this up and make sure that this is working. So let me quick get this here, and I think we are live. All right, so if we have not met yet, my name is Kate. I am the owner of Wild Clementine, where we focus on travel, food and drink, and all the beautiful photos and experiences that go along with that. And Wild Clementine was born out of a space to really embrace these other passions that I have in life. I have two other wedding photography businesses wedding photography and brand photography, businesses that I own and operate. This is really a space where I get to talk about everything else in the world. This is where we talk about being eco-friendly, about places to travel, different foods and drinks that we're indulging in. And I get a lot of feedback from you guys on what you want to hear about. And one thing that I overwhelmingly heard was about national parks. I know that right now during COVID-19 and safer at home orders, a lot of the parks are closed and it's just simply discouraged to go visit them. But this is not going to last forever. And I want to make sure that you are fully prepared, especially if you are feeling a little bit cooped up and you are planning your next adventure, and that next adventure might be your first national park ever. I am here to support you. So, national parks, there are, I think, 62 or 63 national parks in the United States now. There are national parks all over the world. However, they are not all covered by the National Park Service that is set up here in the United States. The National Park Service itself manages, I think it's like 475, just under 500 different properties or spaces. So that includes national parks, national lake shores or coastlines, historic sites, all that sort of thing. So this is more for the actual national parks themselves, but they are applicable to any of those sites protected by the Department of the Interior. So, number one, when you have arrived at the national park for the first time, I highly suggest that you go into the visitor center and educate yourself on what makes this park special and if there are any features that you should be aware of and really conscious of. In Arches National Park, they are known for the cryptobiotic soil. And what this is, it's a very unique organism, a very, very small organism that grows I'm going to kind of butcher the science on this, but it's in the sand and the soil that is in Arches National Park, and it helps prevent erosion. Much of Arches National Park is either sandstone, slick rock, or simply sand. There's a lot of wind out there, not a lot of rain, but there's still a chance for erosion. So because of this cryptobiotic soil that is very slow growing, very hard to cultivate out in the natural world, they are very, very strict about staying on the trail and not stepping off or just making your own trail, even though it just looks like a wide open desert and you can roam wherever you'd like. That actually has a really, really detrimental environmental impact rather than staying on the trail and seeing and enjoying from that space. Just like with Rocky Mountain National Park, the tundra there takes hundreds of years to form. So they also really, really ask that you stay on trail. I mean, that's just an ask in any national park. And that's one of the different notes that I'll make later in this webinar, staying on trail. But I can share that last summer Andy and I were in Rocky Mountain National Park with 4 other friends of ours, and I was actually doing a photo session with one of the other couples. And it was pouring rain. We were up at the top of the park, and it was just a really cool vibe. And we were sitting in our rental car waiting out some of the rain so that we could pop back out and take some pictures. And the parking lot that we were in, it was looking out across the tundra, and you could see these peaks in the background and thunder and lightning, and it was just really epic. And this car pulls up next to us, and they just go running out of their car, running off trail out onto the tundra. They didn't take any time, they either didn't take time to educate themselves or they simply didn't care. If you don't care, you don't belong in a national park. So bye. But they didn't educate themselves on the fact that what they were running all over took hundreds of years to grow, and they were just destroying that by running all over it. So Andy and I may or may not have yelled at them out the car to get off the tundra. So also know that there might be people in the park that take these suggestions and organisms that kind of thing very, very seriously, and you might be educated in ways that you didn't know you were going to be educated in. The next point that I would share for national park etiquette, I think this first part is etiquette anywhere. Don't litter. Clean up after yourself. There is not, it's Mother Earth, but Mother Earth ain't going to pick up after you. You actually have to take care of Mother Earth. So don't litter and practice leave no trace. So not only is not littering under leave no trace, but also don't take things. So it's actually illegal to take things out of the park, like rocks out of Glacier National Park with their beautiful lakes that have the red rocks and the blues and these amazing colors. It's actually illegal to take those, or like taking elk sheds out of Rocky Mountain National Park, or taking pottery shards that you might find in Mesa Verde or Arches National Park. There are some parks that you can take things. It's very limited, like Acadia National Park. They are known for their blueberries out there. So you are actually allowed to graze and pick some blueberries while you're hiking. That is permitted. So just know what is allowed, because that list is much shorter than everything that you cannot take. There are some really, really cute letters that the National Park Service will post on their Instagram and social media of letters from children who like took a stick with them, and then they found out that they actually weren't supposed to take anything, so they mail the stick back and they apologize for taking it. It's adorable, but they are totally embracing the whole leave no trace culture. Leave no trace is also no carving, no graffiti. And this applies in many state parks too. You should not be carving your initials into trees or into the side of a rock or things like that. Even if other people have done it, the parks have probably worked really hard to minimize the damage that was done or remove the graffiti. It just breaks my heart the number of times that I have read articles about people in Arches National Park where there are pictographs and petroglyphs that are thousands of years old that have either been carved into the rock or painted on the rock by indigenous peoples. And there's graffiti over them. Either people are adding their own carvings or they're actually taking spray paint or paint and damaging these. Another one that just ripped my soul was when the government shutdown happened. Joshua Tree National Park saw horrific damage done where people were actually cutting down the Joshua trees, the very thing, the namesake of the park. They were cutting down these trees because the government was in a space where they couldn't protect the park, they couldn't keep the employees. So leave no trace is a whole lot more than that. It can even go as far as not geotagging where you're posting your pictures, that sort of thing. So I would highly encourage you to dive into more research on that. But the biggest things with leave no trace are not littering. If you pack something in, like into the backcountry or that kind of thing, pack it out with you. Don't take things that are especially sacred to that park, like pottery shards, elk sheds, that sort of thing. And don't deface the park, graffiti, carvings, that sort of thing. Another piece of national park etiquette would be to not approach the wildlife and do not feed the wild animals. It, again, is just amazing to me that there are still news stories that we hear of people being stabbed. There's a different technical term by buffalo in Yellowstone because they got too close to the buffalo, that they were trying to take selfies with the buffalo. These are wild animals. Even if these parks are seeing millions of visitors a year and we are somewhat desensitizing these animals to a human presence, that does not mean that they want to snuggle you or pose for your picture or do anything remotely human because they are wild animals. I think another one that I see a lot that many people think is harmless, but it can lead to a lot of other things, are when there are little squirrels or chipmunks that are popping up in the park. And while you're hiking, they're like eating their trail mix and then they'll feed the creature a little peanut or something like that. I don't want to see that. No feeding the wild animals. We are here in a space that is set up to protect these animals so that they can have minimal human impact on them. Now, oftentimes that doesn't happen, especially with very popular parks like Grand Canyon or Zion or Rocky Mountain National Park. In all of those parks, I have seen families feeding the squirrels peanuts and that sort of thing. And the reason that that can become an issue is then these animals are desensitized to a human presence, then they become a nuisance. Then they start begging for food, they're expecting food, they're associating that these big two-legged creatures are going to feed me if I go up to them and go up on my hind legs. And that's when they can then start biting or scratching or getting into your packs. So it's better to just appreciate them at a distance, and tenfold for the larger creatures like elk, bison, wolves, um, bears. I'm trying to think of all the big animals I can think of right now. Give them their space, respect them. They can do a lot of damage to us, and it is their space that we are in. Next, I already touched on this, would be stay on trail. The Parks Service actually creates trails in a way that is intended to be minimally environmentally impactful. So whether they know that there are some peregrine falcons nesting nearby, they may either design a trail that goes around those nesting grounds, or they will simply close a trail. This happened to us when we were in Acadia. There was a very popular hike that we were considering doing, and it was closed because the peregrine falcons were nesting near the trail. So when you stay on the trail, this trail has been set up and designed in a way that is exciting. There are oftentimes things to see, but there is an intention to where it was laid out, whether it is the level of difficulty, whether it is whatever they are protecting in that area. If you're walking through a mountain meadow, oftentimes those floral blooms, they will be significantly damaged if you go off trail, if you step on them, that sort of thing. Even in the, I think it's the Big Sur region in California, where they get those gorgeous poppy blooms, and you'll see people just laying in the flowers or pulling out flowers and taking them with. That is definitely not welcome park etiquette, or even just good citizen of the world etiquette. There are places on trails that you can still get beautiful images. You can hold the flowers in your hand without actually uprooting it, and you can still have an all-encompassing experience while still being on the trail. Next would be get a pass and a permit. This is, I probably should list this as number 2 for national park etiquette, because when you get a pass simply to enter the parks are open 365 days a year, 24/7, barring global pandemics, because there is just so much to experience. And oftentimes the parks are really beautiful at night after sunset, just the dark skies or hearing wolves howling, that sort of thing. So they want to encourage you to have a really dynamic experience. But when you pay for the pass, that helps fund the park's employees, further protection. Part of it does go to other areas of the Department of the Interior, and there are ways that you can actually donate to a park directly or allocate where your donation goes. But it's just a way to show up as a good citizen. And if you're enjoying a park, it's a way that you're already giving back simply by following the rules of needing to have a pass to be there. Some trails or experiences within the parks also require that you get a permit. There are different hikes I know in Zion National Park and many parks too, if you're planning on exploring the backcountry, you need to get a permit. And this is simply because one, the park rangers want to be able to limit the amount of environmental impact in a place. So if you're wandering into the backcountry, they don't want just droves of people to be able to be out there and destroy cryptobiotic soil or tundra or whatever it may be. But it's also a safety measure because if they know that a certain area has potential for flash flooding or lightning strikes or snow and hypothermia, they also know when to expect you to be back. You write down, when you'll be returning, that sort of thing. So if somebody then files a missing persons report or you call for help on a GPS radio or whatever it may be, they can find you much quicker than if you wandered out into the backcountry and nobody knew you were there. Next, kind of along those lines too, would be check the weather in the park and know your limits. If I'll use Rocky Mountain National Park for an example. There is, I don't know the exact elevation difference, but from one of the visitor centers on either side, on either the east or the west side of the park, the elevation of those first visitor centers is much different than the visitor center that is at the roughly middle, highest point in the park. That's actually the highest visitor center in the national park system in our country. And I want to say that it's about a 6,000, between 6,000 and 8,000 foot difference in elevation. I could be totally off on that, but it is a few thousand feet. So down at those base visitor center levels, it could be 60 degrees, sunny. And at the very top of the park, it could be 30 degrees, blowing snow. You can't see anything, making it impossible to traverse across the whole park because that is the road that cuts from one side to the other, and that is the only way to get across the whole park. If you are not aware of the weather and you have planned your trip specifically from like one place to the next and you don't have a backup plan, that can be seriously detrimental. And I'm telling you this from experience. I did a 3-week road trip in 2014, and my intention was to arrive on the west side of Rocky Mountain National Park, be able to drive all the way through and arrive on the east side, and then just cut down to, Boulder, Denver, Colorado, that sort of thing. But instead, I drove up to that west entrance, found out that the road was closed because of snow, and then had to take a 2.5, 3-hour detour back around and below to get where I needed to go for my next spot. That also speaks into the fact that I maybe should have had a little bit more flexibility in my trip planning. But number one, I didn't check the weather. I didn't look at the national park page. Some of these spaces are so wild and beautiful and in the middle of nowhere that it might not show up on your national weather forecast app or the daily weather program that you're watching. So check in on that. And also within that little, subheading that I'm in, know your limits, know what you can physically handle, whether it's hiking, if you are a person that can withstand heat when you are prepared for it, or if you don't mind hiking in the cold when you're prepared for it. Know what your limits are. Don't expect that if you are not an avid hiker, that you'll be able to go out and just crush a 14-mile hike that has a lot of elevation gain along the way, and that by the end of it, that you're just going to feel great and not be injured. Know what your limits are. You can even talk with the rangers and say, hey, this is what I typically do for exercise or how I exert myself. This is what I like to see. What do you recommend? Or do you think that this is possible for me? And they're going to give you very honest feedback because they want to limit the number of search and rescues that they have to do. There are so many hikes in the national park system that in order to be reached, if you were to twist an ankle, break a leg, break your arm, fall down the side of the mountain, the way that they're going to get to you is by helicopter or hiking in. And just as long as it took you to get to that point that you've injured yourself, could be a 4-hour wait before you are then walked 4 hours back out. Now, accidents happen. I absolutely understand that that's just the way that life is. But Know your limits, maybe stretch just a little bit beyond them. That's what life is, but make smart decisions when it comes to that. Next point for national park etiquette. I feel like I've been on like a downward shame spiral. That's not my intention. There is just so much that I have seen with all the national parks that I have been to, all the trips that I've been on, and so much of it is just common sense or just digging a little bit deeper to get some information and learn and educate a little bit. And it's, again, just baffling to me that that has sometimes gone to the wayside. So, next point is when you are going on a hike, the hikers that are going uphill have the right of way. So, if you come across somebody who is hiking uphill and you are hiking downhill, the etiquette is to step out of the way, let them pass, unless the trail is wide enough that you can both walk past each other. I know that there was a hike that Andy and I did in Glacier National Park. It is the Highline Trail, and there is like an offshoot trail that goes to the Grinnell Glacier Overlook, and it is about 800 or 1,000 feet in elevation gain in like a quarter mile or a half mile. And for those of you that don't hike a lot, that is a lot. And that is a grueling uphill. That was our first or second day actually being in the elevation. And we had done a lot of working out ahead of time. I especially had done a lot of training and working out and just being in good physical shape ahead of time. And that uphill portion, we stopped so many times to catch our breath, to just need a breather. And that was more of a one way, like one person at a time trail than we can have two lanes of traffic going at the same time. And what we noticed is not everyone was conscious of the fact that those of us that were going uphill and dying had the right of way more than those coming downhill. I will also say with that hike, there were so many people that were just trucking along that we were almost embarrassed by how often we were stopping, because we were seeing, middle-aged men who had clearly enjoyed life and had a little bit of a beer belly going on, and they are just walking up this whole thing without stopping, and they were walking faster than us. So again, just know what your physical limits are. We definitely pushed ourselves. We knew that that was going to be a hard hike, so we weren't surprised by how sore we were and how much it hurt. But know what your limits are. And also, don't feel bad if somebody is crushing it more than you are, because you have no idea what preparations they put into that hike, or if they live in high altitude all the time and you are coming from Wisconsin where you are very, very low, close to the sea level kind of elevation. Just don't feel bad. Celebrate that you're out there. Along with hiking, next point would be don't blare music from your phone while you hike. And you can actually get reprimanded often from rangers if you are hiking along and you've just got your phone out or you've got a speaker attached to your pack and you're thinking like, oh, this is a great way. I want to explore and be outside. That's actually disrespectful to the other hikers that are often there to enjoy the outdoors. If you do want to listen to music, I suggest bringing headphones, but I would suggest only putting one earbud in or having it only over one ear so that you can hear if other hikers are coming behind you, if somebody's trying to warn you of something, if an animal is coming, if there is, a rock slide or an avalanche or a thunder coming. So don't have both earbuds in. But if you are somebody who enjoys music while you are out there, just be respectful of the other hikers and bring yourself some headphones. Next would be put out fires completely. Know where you can and can't have fires, and know where you can and cannot collect firewood. And also don't bring firewood across state lines. So what this means is when you are camping or at a picnic, designated picnic spot, or camping in the backcountry, make sure that your fires are completely doused. Put a ton of water on them, stir the ashes up, make sure that you cannot feel heat coming off of them. Make sure that you don't see any smoke rising. A little Smokey the Bear moment here for you, but make sure that they're out completely, because even if you just dump some water on it and you walk away, there can still be embers under there. There can still be pieces that will float up and fly off, and then they can land in a very, very dry, grassy spot or land in a dead tree, start a fire, start a wildfire. This happens quite frequently, across the country. But I know that this happened in Australia. This happens with a lot of the wildfires that that take place in the United States. So make sure that your fire is out completely and know where you can and can't have fires. Some parks will even put fire bans in place during really dry seasons if they haven't gotten a ton of rain for whatever other reasons. So know if you can or can't have a fire. And that can also affect if you're able to cook. So then you might have to bring in your own burner. You might have to go into town to eat something. So just be able to plan ahead. Usually they put that information on the national park website. And fun fact, if you want to just really quick and easily go to any national parks website, it is nps.gov/. If the park is one word, like Acadia, it's the first 4 letters. If it is 2 or more words, like Grand Canyon, it's the first 2 letters of the first word and the first 2 letters of the second word. So you can find the information about the fires on their website and also know where you can and cannot collect firewood. Many parks prohibit you from collecting firewood to put into your fire. So you have to either purchase the firewood at a spot in town just outside the park. Some campsites will be selling firewood. You can purchase it there. But also just a note of that too, don't bring firewood across state lines. So if you are road tripping from Wisconsin all the way to Colorado, I would not suggest loading up the back of your truck with some wood that you just plan on burning the whole time so that you don't have to pay for firewood. That can actually be even more detrimental. And that's how things like the emerald ash borer and that kind of thing can get spread. So just don't do it. Next point would be if you are bringing your dog with you to a national park, you are required to keep them on a leash, and you should also look into where you can and can't have them. Most national parks do not allow dogs on any of their trails, or else they have very few designated trails that they can be on. And some of the campgrounds even don't allow for dogs to be in there. So just do your research, because otherwise what might happen is you may show up and you have Fido ready to go, and suddenly you have to find a space to board Fido and pay that, or you have to find a different place to sleep, even if you had made a campground reservation and you simply didn't look into if you could have a dog there or not, and now you're required to find a hotel or some other dog-friendly place. So just know that wild dogs are welcome in some areas of some parks. It's not widespread, and that's simply to protect other wildlife, the things like the tundra, the cryptobiotic soil, and your dog as well, in case they come across, a rattlesnake or a porcupine or unfamiliar terrain, anything like that. Next national park etiquette tip would be prepared. Bring water, bring snacks, bring various pieces of clothing. Train for it if you need to. If you are envisioning an experience where you get to be hiking and out and about and just outside the whole day, but currently your exercise pertains from like walking to your mailbox and getting the mail, or walking around your backyard, or maybe just walking your dog, that's probably not going to be enough endurance built up to have you have a really, really great experience in the parks where you don't feel like crap and you don't feel overexerted. I also suggest having maps with you, actual physical maps, or if you have a GPS system that runs off satellite that does not require being plugged in. I know our car GPS, it has to be constantly plugged in and charging, otherwise it does not function. So have some sort of a map that you can bring with you while you're hiking if there's any chance of you getting lost or off trail. Also have car supplies, like something to change a tire, or jumper cables, or extra windshield fluid. Anything that you need to be prepared for the unknown. Places like Death Valley National Park, if you get a flat tire there and it is the middle of summer, that is a primo situation where you could potentially get heat stroke. You could very quickly become dehydrated. There might not be self-service. You might be walking for a very, very long time if you need somebody else to change your tire for you. So just be as prepared as possible with that. And finally, with that being prepared, let someone know where you're going. Whether it's using the permit system that the park has set up, letting them know that you're going to be in the backcountry, or texting a friend or a parent or your partner where you're going to be. I do that. I travel alone often for work. So this past fall, I was in Virginia and I was in Shenandoah National Park. And I was doing a hike that I knew was going to be fairly easy, but I know that anything can happen. So I was consistently texting Andy or my parents and just saying something like, doing this hike, I expect to be back by this time. If it gets to this time, try and call me or then call the police. I also do that just in life in general when I'm traveling alone. I will call Andy or my parents just to chat on the phone while I'm walking from a restaurant to my car, that sort of thing. But let someone know where you are so that if something were to happen to you, there's a greater chance that you will be found than if nobody knew where you were. Next, this point is kind of relevant to the space that we are in. Honor when the parks are closed. We saw what happened when the government shutdown took place. This was over a year ago now, where parks were closed and they were not staffed to be cleaning bathrooms or emptying trash or simply protecting the park. And places like Joshua Tree National Park had trees cut down. Other parks had their garbage cans just overflowing because people weren't respecting the fact that the parks were not staffed. There was nobody to take care of it. And currently, there are a number of parks that are closed. Grand Teton and Yellowstone, I know for sure, are closed. I haven't kept up because I simply just think that many of the parks are going to close during this time. But that does not mean that it is a free-for-all for us to just wander the national parks for free. Nobody can tell us where we can and can't go, what we can and can't do, the things we can and can't see. I'm going to go touch a buffalo. That's not the space for this right now. This is a space for us to be really great citizens, really be aware of what the national park system stands for, and respect that. And my final point that might seem contradictory to all of the etiquette pieces that I just laid out that might feel like a lot of rules, have fun and just be amazed by the space that you are in. That is the biggest, best thing that you can do. Have fun and just use all of these as a framework of what is expected of me when I show up in a national park as somebody who is a steward of this park and who wants to keep it in this pristine condition and keep it protected. Have fun. Enjoy, try something new. Maybe there is a hike that you're kind of wanting to do. You think you're in shape, but it's a little bit out of your comfort zone. Try it. If there is a ranger talk on a topic that you're interested in, go ahead and try it. Maybe you're camping for the first time. Ask for help. I have so many beautiful memories of campgrounds and the ways that other campers have interacted with me or that I've interacted with them. I remember in 2014, I was in Yellowstone and there were some campers next to us who were from Asia and English was not their first language. I could tell that they were from out of the country just simply by the way that they were, interacting and that sort of thing. And I gave them s'mores. I made them s'mores and gave them their first s'mores. They were able to share in broken English that they had never had them and that they thought they were pretty good. And then there were also times where, one time I was in the San Juan Islands and the couple that I was camping next to, they shared their huckleberry pancakes with me that they had harvested these huckleberries because every year around their anniversary, the huckleberries are in season. So they harvest a bunch of them and they always go camping for their anniversaries. They were celebrating their anniversary and shared their anniversary pancakes with me and just brought them over and were so sweet. So try something new, have fun, get a little bit outside your comfort zone while still just being a respectful citizen in this space of the world. The national parks are so amazing. They were created for us to view them. They were also created to be protected. If you have any questions on how can I be a better national park steward, how can I support the parks more, please feel free to reach out. I've done a lot of research on this. I'm happy to share topics with you. I know that the parks can always use extra funding. The current administration is considering actually even cutting funding further than it has been, which then limits the number of park rangers and the abilities of the parks, that sort of thing. So if you have it in your heart to be able to donate, you can either go to the National Park Service, some of the parks directly. Some of the parks have foundations set up that specifically support those parks, like Yellowstone Forever, I know is one where they specifically support Yellowstone National Park in that area. But any way that you can see to be a great steward, if you have any ideas, feel free to reach out to me. My personal email is kate@wildclementine with a K.com. I will talk to you soon. I hope you have an amazing day.